The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story. Today is Friday, June 2nd, 2023. I'm talking with Joshua Angelica, who served the United States Coast Guard. So welcome, Josh.
No, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, so we're gonna start out simple today. We're gonna talk about where it all started. So if you could just tell us a little bit about when and where you were born.
I was born in San Antonio, Texas in 1991.
All right. And what was it like growing up in San Antonio?
It was fun. I got to enjoy as much as I could. My mom was a single mom, so I moved around a little bit and, job to job, and I got to experience a little bit of all sides of San Antonio. I know a lot of people that are from here kind of stick to their side of the city and that different culture and environment, but I got to experience a little bit of all of it. So I really enjoyed San Antonio, so much so that I'm back here again, raising my family here. So I enjoyed it a lot. Military city, USA, and they hold to it for sure.
Yeah. So did you have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I actually got three brothers and three sisters. I have a brother and two sisters on my dad's side, and then on my mom's side, I have two brothers and a sister. So I actually fall second in line between them. I have an older brother on both sides, and then I have younger siblings. So it's kind of a big family, but we're kind of separated because, it's my dad's side and my mom's side. It's not just one big household.
Right. And so when you think about your mom, do you have like a memory of your mother that, like, when you think of your mother, this is what you think about?
Yeah, my mom was always everybody's mom. Everybody loved her just as much as I did because she was always willing to go the extra mile to make sure everybody was welcomed and felt comfortable. I mean, even that last year before I went away to the military, she would always she would leave our Christmas tree up in the house, and every holiday that came, she'd decorate the tree because she just wanted to celebrate everything, and our house was just set up to entertain people because she just wanted everybody to feel very home and welcoming and comforting. And she's been my best friend and my support through everything that I've been through.
Well, that's awesome. It's always good to have those kind of memories. So what was it like growing up as a kid in San Antonio?
I grew up in that weird generation where it was still okay to play outside and ride your bike everywhere, and didn't have cell phones, got to be home before the street lights on. So I got to enjoy it a little bit. As I got a little bit older, my youth, I should say, like my teens, preteens, and later teens, my mother got remarried, so we were more in an established place. So I was actually able to grow up with my same friends and that kind of stuff. But as I got older, again, not having a car, not having a phone, that kind of stuff, I got to ride my bike everywhere. And for some reason that sticks in my mind so much because my daughters now, I got three daughters now, and their mind is completely blown that we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have to ask permission to go around anywhere. We just knew that we had to be home by the time the streetlights came on. And the only way I would get around was a bicycle that I would ride 3, 4, 5 miles, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it was, for a child at 13, 14, 15 years old, riding his bike 5 miles, it's a lot back then. But yeah, it was fun that we got to enjoy it. I felt like it was a lot simpler than today's, chaos that goes on.
Today, I feel like we drop our kids off down the block and say, text me when you're ready for a ride home.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And they don't drink from the garden hose anymore either.
Yeah, they can't even fathom that.
So as you're growing up and you're going to school, did you play any sports, or did you have anything that you were really interested in?
Yeah, well, I did a couple things, but I just never really picked up on anything. I did the ROTC for a year just because I wanted to do something different my freshman year, and that didn't last too long. I raised an animal, for FFA. I had a pig that I raised up and took to shows. And then my senior year, my junior year, out of nowhere, I just wanted to join swimming. And I said, hey, I want to be on the swim team. I think my teacher at the time was actually the coach, and I didn't even know it until the second year I had her. So I asked her about it, and she was like, "Well, I'm the coach, and you should join and come try out." And so I tried out. Never done any sports my whole life until my junior year of high school. Was okay that year, and then my senior year I kind of get a little bit better, and by that time I was already graduated, and I enjoyed it. Actually, being the captain of my swim team my senior year, I also advanced, so I actually got my letterman my senior year as well in swimming. So it was great. It was a lot of fun. I kind of regret not doing it any sooner in high school to kind of grow my I guess not popularity, but just I got so many friends, so many different views and outcomes of high school itself that I never experienced until the senior year of high school, when I was like, all right, not only am I a senior, but I have all the friends, I have all the sports, we have all the pep rallies, we have all the everything, and it was crazy. But yeah, I did swim in for 2 years, and it was a whole lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. And you finished out your senior year, and what happened after high school?
So after high school, so I actually dipped into the Coast Guard the summer before high school. Actually, I don't know, one day I was sitting at home, and I struggled a lot in school with dyslexia and 504 program and that kind of stuff. So school was always challenging for me just because I just couldn't get it fast enough. So I would get real irritated with it. And I remember my mom got to a point where she was just like, you just got to figure out what you want to do. It doesn't matter if you want to try to go to trade school or college or the military or whatever you want to do. You just got to figure something out. You're getting ready to graduate. I don't want you living at home working and that kind of stuff. So I remember one day I just grabbed the phone book and phone book. Most people don't know what that is anymore, right? And a lot of new generations, but
Right.
so I grabbed the phone book, and in the front of the yellow pages, it said the branches of the military. And I just went down and I saw the 5 branches, and I was like, I wonder what branch I want to go to. And I read each name, and I had my own opinions on each one, and so I got to narrow down to two. It was in the Marines or the Coast Guard, and I either wanted to be a tough guy that was a meathead and doing something crazy, or I wanted to help and save people. So I tried calling the Coast Guard several times and never answered. Ended up calling the Marines next because the Coast Guard never answered, and the guy there, he asked me what I want to join the Marines, and I told him it wasn't my first choice. I wanted to join the Coast Guard, but I couldn't answer anybody. So, you guys are the next runner-ups. And he actually knew somebody in the Coast Guard that was a recruiter, and he gave me his information. I went that way. So anyway, that summer before my senior year, I went through this whole process, did all that stuff, and I actually dipped in of August of 2008. So a whole year before I even graduated, I actually knew I was already going in the military. I did my depth in, I swore on my initial swear in, and that kind of stuff. So my senior year, I was kind of just living it up as best I can because I knew I was leaving once the summer was over right after high school. I took the summer off just like everybody else did. When everybody went to school, I left to the military.
Now, when you were in the delayed entry program or the DUP program, did you go to meetings and all that throughout that year?
No, that wasn't really that big back then. He did talk about it. He was like, we're going to try to get y'all some like temp cards or visitor cards so y'all can access the gym and can get ready, that kind of stuff. And we get together. And I think one time we went and we had like a group workout with a lot of other veterans, or not veterans, I'm sorry, a lot of other delayed entry program people there. It was just a couple more kids, and I think like an older guy that was trying to get back in for the reservists. But it wasn't as big as what I hear about them now. I know now they have like either weekly or monthly get-togethers and that kind of stuff where they all work out and they do like ASVAB studies, or they even do whatever service studies and different stuff like that. But whenever I was doing it, I don't really remember a whole lot of it getting pushed on us.
Okay. So your friends go off to school or whatever they're going to do, they get jobs, and you head off to the military. Talk a little bit about what it was like when you first left and ended up at basic training.
Well, like typical, the first 2-3 days, I was wondering what in the heck I got myself into, what I was thinking, getting yelled at and not doing anything right, and just kind of, um, you know, not knowing what life is at all. But after after getting over that and kind of just getting into it, boot camp was actually I actually enjoyed it. It was quite fun. You couldn't really mess up if you just didn't have a thought. All you had to do was listen and react, you know. So I enjoyed a lot of boot camp. After boot camp, it was just, I guess in boot camp was kind of a reality check of what the Coast Guard was, because I didn't have a full understanding. I just kind of thought it was orange helicopters and tiny boats. I had no idea what cutters were. I had no idea what their exact mission was. I've only had a few interaction with the Coast Guard when I was a kid, at the coast, going fishing and seeing them escort Navy boats in and out and that kind of stuff, or you see them like on cruises when they rescue people. And that's about the only interaction I had. So I just knew they were helping people. I didn't know they did the whole drug interdiction and migrant control and commercial fisheries and recreation fishery enforcement. And I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. So in boot camp, I learned a whole lot about what we were going to do. I actually got a little bit more excited about it because it was just stuff that I didn't know that they were doing that I was getting ready to be a part of, you know? So doing all that and learning all that, and then halfway through boot camp, you're kind of wondering where you're going. And then at the time I, of course, fell in love before I went to boot camp. So I was like, all right, well, I'm planning my life, but then I also have somebody else I got to think about. And I wasn't married at the time, but I was writing letters, and, we only get divine hours to read our letters and write our letters. So everything that I was sending and getting was a week delayed. So I would ask my wife, you want to go to East Coast, or my girlfriend at the time, you want to go to East Coast or West Coast? And then I would pick on Monday, and then next Sunday she's like, "Oh, East Coast." I'm like, "Oh, I already picked West Coast, so that's going to be fun conversation when we get home and that kind of stuff." So I ended up getting West Coast, and I got on a cutter, and my mind was blown because I didn't know what a cutter was 2 weeks prior to that, and just kind of starting everything out and not realizing what it's just happening. It's like almost surreal. It's happening so fast and so quick, and it's like a story that you hear about, and then you actually start living it. It was a lot of fun. Looking back at it now, I didn't know how an 18-year-old was doing it, but man, it was awesome that I was going through it at the time.
So what was your job in the Coast Guard, and what kind of training did you have for that?
So I was a machinery technician. Eventually, that was kind of a little bit too. When I first, the Coast Guard's not like a lot of other branches. You kind of go to boot camp, and then you go out to the fleet, and then you wait to get your rating or whatever rate you want to go. It's not a lot of the other branches. You go to boot camp and you already have your MOS or your rating picked out. I mean, it's kind of shunned upon to be an undesignated, I guess, in other branches is what I'm hearing. But the Coast Guard's kind of the opposite. They kind of want you to go out and become a seaman and a fireman, at different units. Either if you're on a boat, you're cooking and painting and line handling and doing all the labor work, I call it, or grunt work. Other branches call it, and that kind of stuff. So they kind of want you to go out and do time because the Coast Guard's so small and they don't really have, a lot of people out there. So my thoughts is they don't have, I would assume they don't have a lot of people that want to pick those type of jobs. So they just kind of make you go out and do it until you get to grow up and pick your job. So it's a lot of people I always seem like a lot of people minds are blown that, I went out there and I didn't have a job whenever I went to the Coast Guard. I didn't have a job picked specifically when I went to the Coast Guard.
Right.
So anyways, when I got out, I went to the cutter, didn't know what I want to do at the time. I thought I wanted to do aviation because, the Guardian came out. Everybody wants to be a flyboy. Everybody wants to do some kind of stuff like that. And I kind of had a mechanic background already, welding and working at my father's company and being an operator and a diesel mechanic and that kind of stuff. So mechanic was kind of my background. But everybody wants that flyboy, golden boy look and Top Gun and the aviators and all that good stuff. So
yeah.
I thought I wanted to go to aviation, but everybody did. So the wait list was, I think, 2 years to go to school. They only take, one class a month or one class every other month. So you're only talking 12 to 20 people every month that get to go on this list. And these lists are, 250, 300 people deep. So you just got to wait your time, and so I waited, and I was on the boat for 2 years. I was on that cutter, learning and working and doing that kind of stuff, just being a non-rate kind of deal. And I put my name on a AST, aviation survival technician. So being a rescue swimmer pretty much, and waited my time. I went to an air station to become an airman before I went to school. And in that airman program, they have, it's a structured 16 weeks, every day you have a workout 7 days a week for 16 weeks and that kind of stuff. And I was not prepared at all for that type of training. I coming off a boat where I was underway and I was mess cooking, just washing dishes 18 hours a day, or line handling and doing helm and lookout and standing all my watches. I didn't have time to work out. We were underway. The boat's only 420 feet long. It's not like we have a huge flight deck or a lot of crazy workout equipment and didn't have the time to work out on it, that kind of stuff. So when I went to the airman program to start getting ready, all the other guys that were there were on week 10, 11, 12 of that training course. And I was on week 1. So when I would try to work out of my syllabus and start on week 1, the more senior airmen there would be like, no, we all do the same workouts. That's how we do it. It's camaraderie. We work together. And I'm okay. All the military stuff, I get it. Let's do that. But these guys are 10, 12 weeks ahead of me and they're kicking my butt. I'm struggling to keep up. I'm dying. I just came off a boat, wasn't really working out. There was no gym, didn't have no endurance, no nothing. Definitely wasn't swimming, that kind of stuff. So I ended up only lasting like a month and I ended up failing my test to even get in there. So I went from wanting to be a red swimmer, all that kind of good stuff, trying to work out everything. So because I failed instead of quit, I ended up being able to stay there at the air station as a fireman, still a non-rate. But I got to wait, and I didn't have to wait a whole year. Usually if you quit, you have to wait a year and you can put your name on a list and you have to work your way down the list. But because I failed and not quit, I was able to put my name on another list. And that's when I was like, okay, well, let me go back to my, default or what I've known or good at or have ties in is being a mechanic. So that's why I put my name on the mechanic. And apparently nobody wants to be a mechanic because I was gone in like 6 months, already going to A school to be a machinery technician.
Well, sometimes it pays off to pick the job that nobody else wants, right?
Yeah. It's just, I probably should have went that way first. I probably would have went a little bit further in my career or even stayed in my career longer. But yeah, no, it was fun. It was experience, more of experience that I've never would have thought I got.
So what was your A school like?
A school it was awesome. It was in Yorktown, Virginia. So just the historic part of it alone was awesome. There was a Civil War battle there and the American Revolution was great there. And that was cool. Just itself being there was awesome. But the structure of the A school itself was in the beginning it was kind of boring because again, I have somewhat of a mechanic background already before going in. So I remember the 1 week of tools, they're holding up, these are pliers and this is a screwdriver. And oh man, I was dying.
Right.
Yeah, it was just, but it's just they give you the basic and the basics of everything, all the different type of systems and how everything works. So it's not really like class specific to type of boat or engine. They just give you a broad baseline for foundation for everything that goes on. So it's funny because I've kept all those workbooks and all the books that I've had when I was in A school, and I have them all in the crate in the garage. And sometimes I go back there when I'm arguing with my at work now, and they're like, "This is not how this system works." And I'm like, "Look, I'm not saying this is the military way to do it, but like books are great keys because it tells you exactly how this system works, as easy and basic as it gets. Just start from like square one." So I use that a lot, just kind of like, as a turning back to a foundation of, I remember it's this simple, this easy, this basics, that kind of stuff. And in the mechanic world is, everything I do now, I'm a mechanic now. So everything I do now, it goes off the same system of electronics and hydraulics and plumbing and just all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of dry, kind of simple, but also great because at that time I just turned 21. So I was, living my quote unquote college years, I guess you can say, being able to go out and enjoy adult things and people, and everybody's there for the same thing. So you kind of feel like you grew up, because I just came from being a non-rate, which is you feel like the stepchild, you're just doing all the labor stuff, you're washing, you're painting, you're doing everything that nobody wants to do, you're cleaning, that kind of stuff. And then I get to grow up and go to school, and I'm going to become an adult, you know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah.
it was, you get to enjoy what E-Club is finally, because I was of age. So that was fun, and so it was fun. I get to grow up in a lot of sense, not just physically or, age wise, but also maturity wise. Got to move up in my career as well as my life at the same time,
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your time in training and all that. Are there any people, like, did you make some friends there that maybe you still see?
Yeah, I mean, I- I've stayed friends with a lot of my people that I've been stationed with. One guy that I was with, we went to A school with. We went to A school together, same class. We actually got stationed on the same unit right afterwards. So that was kind of cool that we got to piggyback on each other. That we went to train together and we got stationed together. But I have a lot of friends still that that I real close to, or that I visit frequently, or talk to frequently as well. That brotherhood that you get and that bond that you make is just different. It's just a little different from what you would get like in somebody you went to high school with, or here in the civilian world with the guys that I work with now. You're forced to work with people no matter what your mood is or their mood it is. I mean, when I was on my second boat, we would be out for 120 180 days straight, and in that patrol and that deployment, sometimes 16 18 days straight of no land, so you're stuck on 270 feet with 100 people, and you got to learn to live with them and like them, and you just build a camaraderie because you get pushed through those normal feelings and emotions that you do. Like here in the civilian world, you don't like somebody, you just walk away from them, but you can't get away from them when you're on a boat. So you kind of, in my mind, I just feel like, all right, well, I feel the way I feel, so we just get over that, and you learn to look past that stuff and grow that brotherhood or sisterhood with them, and really enjoy them. So a lot of people that I've been stationed with, I mean, I've hold near and dear to my heart still to this day. I mean, they come to my wedding, we go and visit them in Florida or California or Maine, and where they live now, and get to enjoy them and see how we've moved on, or moved up in their career and that kind of stuff.
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you. Yeah, so the other question I kind of have is, when you got to your first ship, you were on the Coast Guard cutter. Anything really like stick out in your mind of something that happened or someplace that you went, that when you think about your time there, that's kind of what you think about?
So yeah, well, yes, there's several things. My first cutter was it was the newest ship in the Coast Guard. It wasn't even owned by the Coast Guard when I reported in. So that whole thing itself was quite an experience, because when I reported to that boat, I didn't report to the boat. I reported to the pier in Alameda, California. The boat was even there, and it was just we had some portables, and that's where we worked out of. And whenever we report to a unit, you got to do your drawings for the ship so that you can learn the familiarization with everything and that kind of stuff. So I was like, how am I going to do my drawings and get qualified in my watches and all my stuff when we don't have a boat? They're like, well, you got to go to the other boat, and that's the sister ship, and that's the first one in the Coast Guard, and you can go look at all that. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to fly down to our boat being built and Pascagoula, Mississippi, and then you can compare your drawing to that boat and that kind of stuff. So I remember putting into a boat that it wasn't even a boat yet. It was in the shipyard. So I did all that, and I ended up flying down to Mississippi, reporting to the ship, and again, reported to the ship, but we couldn't even be on it. You could only be on it during business hours. They were still building it. There wasn't even fully painted on, the top side, and only half the lights work and that kind of stuff. It was in the water already and that kind of stuff, but we was not in living conditions yet. So we were living in hotels, getting bussed back and forth every day to the ship, doing what we needed to do and that kind of stuff. So I say I reported in August. The boat returned to California in February of 2010. So 6 months. I was just kind of getting passed around, just hotels, barracks, that kind of stuff. And we finally moved on the ship, living in the shipyard on the ship, and then moving over to another shipyard and that kind of stuff. And so it was really neat that I got to experience it so new like that. So a lot of things that I remember about that boat is I didn't know what a cutter was before I went. And then I ended up going to the biggest cutter in the Coast Guard. And then being young, 18 years old, 19 years old, going on a boat, you're thinking, oh, I got to sleep with 6 guys. I got only one head I got to share with all them, and that kind of stuff. And you're thinking everything's so bad, it's so horrible. You're not thinking of anything at all. And later on, when I went to a different cutter that was 30 years old, living with 24 guys and sharing 3 toilets between all of them and 3 showers and that kind of stuff, I'll tell you what, your mind is blown whenever you think you had it tough and there's a tougher time. But that first boat sticks in my mind because it was brand new. It was brand new, and I took advantage of all that technology, all those luxuries, all that everything that I experienced that I had no idea any of it was gonna be. We ended up leaving Mississippi, going through the Panama Canal. We had a couple port calls. I think we stopped in Cozumel, went through the Panama Canal. I actually went through the Panama Canal on my 19th birthday. That was cool.
Oh, wow.
My wife and my mother got to watch me on they have a webcam, they go to the Panama Canal, so they saw my ship going through and that kind of stuff. So we went through the Panama Canal. We stopped there in Panama, and we spent 2 days there at that port call. Then we came up to Puerto Vallarta before we went to Alameda, California, our home point there. But that first getting ready for the ship, making the cutter a Coast Guard cutter, making sure all the color compliance is right, making sure all the life jackets have whistles and strobes and flares and all that kind of stuff. So building that entire boat is what I think about whenever I think of that ship, because it was brand new. I was a plank owner on there, so my name is on the plaque in the chief's mat or in the captain's stateroom of first crew. I was a plank owner, so just making that Coast Guard cutter a cutter is what sticks in my mind about the Voyage, the first boat I was on.
Yeah, and Josh, what was the name of that? What was the name of that boat?
The Coast Guard cutter Voyage.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And so it was the second of its class then?
Correct. It was the second national security cutter that was being made. I think they're done now. I think they made all 8 as of now. But yeah, it was the second one. The first one was the Bertolf, and that one I guess was about 6 months or 8 months older than the way she was at the time. I don't remember the commissioning date of that one.
Okay. And then so how long did you spend on that particular cutter?
I was on that cutter for, let me think here. I reported in October 2009, and then I left there, I want to say December. I'm sorry, not December, 2011. So probably 18 months.
Okay.
Yeah, it had been about 18 months. I think the summer of 2011 is when I left that boat to go to the air station.
And so this is interesting because like you saw that ship from the time it really wasn't a ship or a boat to, actually going through the Panama Canal and visiting all those places. What was it like to walk off that cutter knowing that you're probably not going to go back to it?
I don't know. That's I try to think back now. I was real young, so when they were like, "Okay, you get to go to school," in my mind, I was thinking, "No more cooking dishes, no more painting, no more double watches, no more, no more labor grunt work. I get to just run and get out of here." So I wasn't even thinking about that at the time. I actually was thinking that I eventually one day might come back to it, because again, wanted to be a rescue swimmer. I want to go aviation. A lot of air stations or helos get attached to the boats whenever they go out on deployment for whatever mission, if they're doing drugs or they're doing migrants or SAR cases or whatever. So I never thought about I might not ever come back to the unit. I actually thought the opposite. I thought maybe it'd be cool one day to come back as an aviator or whatever rate I go, to be like, oh, I was here, this is where I started at this place, that kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. A great way to look at it. So this is where you went to the air station, and then you ended up becoming a fireman and then a mechanic. And so what was your duty station after your A school then?
So after A school, I went to the Coast Guard cutter Northland, which was in Portsmouth, Virginia on the East Coast. I didn't know what I was walking into with that one. The boat was commissioned in the 70s, and I was like, oh gosh, I totally took advantage of everything, So I went there with just young. I just had my first daughter. I've already been married a couple years. My wife was, she was at home the whole time I was in A school, so we were going to move together, and I was again a new family, and then I'm thinking about, okay, I got a new family, I have a job finally, and then I'm going to this old boat that's going to be broken all the time, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life because again, A school was just the basic fundamentals of everything. I didn't know anything, you know, I didn't know anything. You can say I didn't. I felt like I didn't know anything, but I just knew hand tools and systems. So when I reported that boat, I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think. I wanted to go in there like most young people. Yeah, I know what I'm doing and I'm smart. And I just came out of school and I'm this high and mighty this and this high and mighty that and all that good stuff. And then reporting in there, learning that there's firemen that have been there for 2 and 3 years before me that know everything inside and outside that boat because they're waiting for schools. And that was a huge reality check going in there. And I thought I was the smart one because I was the petty officer. And then this one fireman's like, that's not how this works. Let me show you this stuff, and that kind of deal. So reporting that boat, I was kind of nervous because it was old, and I was also nervous because I was a new mechanic and old systems that I didn't know what was going to happen or how they were going to work and function and that kind of stuff. But being able to put my feet down there and put everything together that I've learned was great. It was awesome that I got to experience an older Coast Guard history, I guess you could say, some of the older boats that weren't decommissioned, that was the training platform. I mean, a lot of people would reference those boats, whenever they were like, well, when I was on this boat and this how that system works. So, this how this system should work. So, just using that as like I guess you can say, I can't think of the right words for this.
Like a training aid, right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, just just like a hands-on training, I guess you can say. Put everything you've heard, and now you get to see, and then keep using, in the future.
So did you take advantage of that opportunity to learn from those guys who'd been there for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had to. Yes, I did. I'm still really good friends with one of the guys he was the bigger a-hole at the time, I should say. He was older than me physically, in age, but he was also older, being on the boat. So I remember he used to always give me hell. You're the new guy. You don't know anything. This. And I said, look, one time I had to pull him aside. I said, I get it, what you're saying, you know what I mean? But I'm not being, an a-hole to you. You shouldn't be to me. Like, I'm here to do my job. You know your job. You've been here way longer than me. Of course I don't know anything. I just got here. I just got out of school. I've never been to this old boat. The boat I just came from was brand new. Like, you got to give me some slack here. I'm going to work with you and I'll have your back because I'm technically above you or your supervisor, but you also got to have my back and learn that I have to learn too, because you're going to leave eventually and someone's got to take the rope. So let's get on the same page here and work together and, become something here. And we actually did become a really good group of guys and a really good team. And, after I put my foot down and gain their respect by standing up for myself, and they gained my respect too, so that whenever we were doing something and it wasn't the best call or it was a questionable call, I could easily absorb that punishment from the top end, for those guys, kind of sticking up for them, because that's at the time that's all I could really offer. It's not like I had the right knowledge to make the right call on if we were fixing something or whatever the case may be, but at least I can always stand up for the guys, like, oh, I trusted them, or I made that decision, and try to pay it back to those guys. But I definitely learned a whole lot from those guys versus a lot of other guys who are just, read the tug clubs, you'll figure it out, this and that. Those guys would actually teach me hands-on where to go to. So the first year was fun learning from your subordinates of how to do it better. Which is funny because I hold that to this day. I think you should always learn from above you and below you, not just want to take out the upper guy, but you get everything you can learn from everybody around you. And the Coast Guard, they always want you to learn everybody's position above you, below you, and next to you, so that if something were to happen to one of you guys, you can just jump over and take over. And I learned that that's not really a thing too much anymore in the civilian world. For example, like my wife was working at a bank for a while, she came home one day just real stressed, real just overworked and annoyed, and just I was like, "What's going on? Having a bad day?" She's like, I was the only one working today, and this and that." And I was like, "Isn't there supposed to be a manager with you? Like, there's supposed to be two of y'all in the bank?" And she was like, "Yeah, but she doesn't know how to run the teller line." And I was like, "What?" That completely blew my mind, that your supervisor or your manager doesn't know how to do your job. Like, I could not fathom that in my head, that was not a thing at the time, And
Right.
I just go right back to the Coast Guard, and I was like, man, whenever we were on a small boat doing missions off the cutter, if we were doing a drug bust and something happened to the coxswain or something happened to the engineer, like the boat crew can easily, okay, I can drive the boat, or I can turn the engine on, or I knew what, they can just kind of, it wasn't their job, but they can easily do enough to get by with, and the fact that people operate not like that, I'm like speechless on it, it's weird to me.
Right. Well, you talk about, Josh, you talk about learning the person next to you, learning their job. So in case something happens, I was just curious. I know in the Navy they have a surface warfare qualification. Do they do the same thing in the Coast Guard?
So I believe that's equivalent to like a Cutterman's pin, maybe.
Yeah, probably. It's like looks like a ship, and you have to learn all the systems on the ship in order to earn it.
Oh, okay. So I'm sure I'm trying to think what's kind of similar to that. Well, yeah, I guess like being a Cutterman, it would be the same thing, a Cutterman's pin. So a Cutterman's pin, you got to have 5 years of sea time. You got to have at least two units that you were stationed on, and I don't remember the length of the ship, maybe 64 feet, or I forgot the length. There's a minimum length to the what kind of cutter you can be attached to earn that sea time. Um, but then, like I said, so two units, have all your qualifications that you can in your position at the time, and then 5 years total of sea time. So I'm a little bitter about that because I missed that by point 0.4 years,
Oh,
that I didn't get it. But I didn't get it because when I was on the Weishi, I reported in October, but the boat didn't get commissioned till May of
yeah.
2010. So because it wasn't a commissioned ship, I get no credit for none of that, none of the time that I was served on there. So whenever I got out of the service at 6 years, I only have 4.8 years of sea time, and I'm like, oh, I was so close to getting my Cutterman's pin and being able to have that, and just share that with other people that I was able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about the timing. So you reported this older ship. It sounds like it was a overall good experience. What did you do after that?
So after the Northland is when my enlistment was up. In 2014, we're doing our picks for where we want to go. I had about a year left of my contract, and talking with my wife, we were kind of in the middle of what we should do. Should we stay in? Should we get out? My father at the time, my stepdad offered me an opportunity to come home and kind of help with his business and help kind of take over a little bit. And then at the same time, my wife's father and her brother were in the oil field. They own 18 wheelers, and they were running sand and that kind of stuff. And they were, making just dollars that, I couldn't even think of back then, 40,000 a month. And I'm like, there's no way I can make that in a month time, but so we were in the middle, do we get out and chase the money, chase this dream, or retire the military? Or do we stay in the military and keep going in a career? So we put our picks in, and I put in like crazy places that I was like, I'll never get these because, nobody gets these, units. You got to be like coming from Bahrain or overseas and have like a priority one, or being, time and grade for so long before you get those types of units. But I put like Lake Tahoe, California, small boat station, station vacation, they call it, because you only work 9 months a year, and you're on a lake, you're not in salt water, you're not doing nothing crazy. There's no migrants, there's barely any drugs. It's usually just like boating accidents and BUIs is all you really deal with. And then my second pick was Panama City, Florida, which is 8 in navigation. So you just painting buoys, making sure the trees aren't growing over the buoys, and the beacons are working, and the reflectors are reflecting, that kind of stuff. Just again, station vacation, 9 to 5 job, doing nothing crazy, anything. The picks come out, and I get my number 2 pick. And I'm like, there's no way that I just got that, you know?
Oh, wow.
So in that time frame, I already convinced myself that I was like, whatever, I'm not getting those. So I'm going to start looking at getting out. So I was already looking at getting out. I was already setting up what I wanted to do and that kind of stuff. So, I guess I got my orders and I turned them down. I didn't get them. I refused them or just said, thank you, but I'm just going to not re-enlist and I'm just going to get out. So that's when they started my getting kicked out phase. I call it though, but
Right.
by separation time.
Right. So you left the Coast Guard, and what have you been doing since?
So I got out of the Coast Guard 2015. I was going to go be a mechanic in the oil field just because I had, some experience and that kind of stuff. But in the midst, that's when my stepdad was like, hey, I'm getting older. The company, why don't you come home and run the company? So I was at the time I was just an operations manager for a soil and stone company, sorry. And we make mulches and mixes and that kind of stuff for landscape material. And it was a huge operation. We had a brush dump and that kind of stuff. So I was in charge of, at first I was just the equipment manager in charge of everything, the 18 wheelers, the loaders, that kind of stuff. And then that's when I went up to the operations manager in charge of all the products coming in, going out, all the scheduling, what needed to be made, what needed to be shipped, as well as taking care of what's broken, what needs to be repaired, that kind of stuff. And that lasted about 2 years. And that's when I learned that working with any family is not easy or can't be easy or simple. And then one day I told my dad, I got to leave here because if I don't, I'm not going to love you anymore. So we kind of have to go our separate ways here, buddy, so we can keep our relationship. And that's ended up what happened. And I left there. And by this time, the oil field was extremely kicked off. And again, my father-in-law and my brother were already, making bukus of bucks. And at the time, I had no idea what 18-wheeler took to run and to drive and get a license and, how big they were. And I didn't know how much money they were going to cost and that kind of stuff. So I avoided it. I was thought that, working with my dad was going to be the easy life. And then it turned out to be the opposite. So by this time, I was like, okay, I'll listen to you guys. So I went out and got a loan and I bought an 18-wheeler and I started hauling frac sand for the oil field in South Texas and West Texas. And I did that for 4 years into the oil field crash and, just kind of grew my family. And again, we kept learning and mechanic wise, my truck was an older truck that I bought the truck that everybody wanted and everybody sought after. It was just a long nose Peterbilt with the big caliper motor, high horsepower, loud pipes, nice, great, awesome truck, just rough and rugged and felt like a man's man, It's like the Harley Davidson of 18-wheelers,
Oh, yeah.
So I learned a lot, made a lot of money, made a lot of friends. I enjoyed a lot of it because I went back. I got the sense of that camaraderie that I was missing from the military. I would work a month out and take a week off to come back home. And for the month out, I'm running with the same 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. 24 hours a day in the oil field. If you refuse a load or don't take a load, I mean that's $1,000 that you just missed out on by not delivering a load. So you don't want to miss out on it because all you have to do is answer your phone and you spend $1,000. It's money like
Right.
that just comes that quick, that fast, and you don't sleep. You depend on each other to keep each other awake, to help each other out with repairs, so you can keep going. To just enjoy your time, and you have no family. Those are your friends. They become family. And so that camaraderie, that brotherhood that I was missing from being in the Coast Guard, from being on the ship, being in the cutter, I kind of had a taste of it back again. So I got to really enjoy it. And a lot of those guys still, I feel the same way about a lot of those guys that I talk to now as I did. It's the same way as those guys from being on the Coast Guard. Just have that close bond that you go through all your moods, you go through all your feelings, you push all that aside to keep pushing through, and look at the bigger stuff in life with each other than just the normal stuff that you have to go through. um I did that, and like you said, my family doubled since then. I had 2 more daughters when I was in there, and by the time the oil field kind of crashed, I was already getting a little bit tired of it. I was kind of spend everything I could on my truck, to get it repaired and fixed. And I was like, okay, well, oil field crash. I came back local and I was hauling cement, dry bulk cement, same truck, same trailer. So that didn't take off a whole lot of work, but it just wasn't making the money I was making. I was making $250,000 a year, and I was barely making 100,000. So I was like, okay, my truck expenses are the same, but I'm making less than half what I was making before. I was trying to live the same lifestyle, and I just couldn't do it anymore, and didn't know what I was going to do. At the time, it's kind of running around trying not to pull my hair out. So I ended up selling my truck. Sold my truck for what I paid for, which is great because it was 4 years later and that kind of stuff. So that got rid of, what little debt I had whenever I had to, overhaul my engine and that kind of stuff, all the normal repairs that you go through, and sold my truck, got rid of all that stuff. And I actually stayed working at that same trucking company that I was leased onto, hauling cement. So I became a dispatcher. And I was just pushing trucks, and I was working the graveyard shift, just like 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., which I loved it because that's the time I like to work. It's quiet, it's peaceful, nobody's really awake yet. The traffic's kind of down, and, you stay in that zone, and those guys there were just getting up. But I like that I was just an owner op. I had my own truck. So whenever these guys call me, I could, talk them through what to do and how to do it. And whenever I was making the schedule for the truck's routes, I felt like, not the camaraderie, but I just felt like that connection. Like, I've been in your shoes. I know what you want. I can make you guys happy. I'm here to work with you guys, and make their days go by easier and that kind of stuff. So I enjoy that a lot too. It was fun that I got to use my personal experience of being, a driver and that kind of deal, to help these guys have a good day and have them run out there and work as hard as they could work, with me and that kind of stuff. I did that for, I don't know, maybe like 8 months, 9 months or so. And then it just, again, got back to that profiles. It just wasn't a very high paying job. And I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. That wasn't the position I applied for when I first sold my truck, but that was just a position they had open. And I thought, if I get my foot in the door here, I can stay here and then I can move up from here. But there just wasn't moving fast enough, as fast as my family was moving. So I left that job, and now I'm back being a mechanic, something that I've avoided. When I got out of the military, I just told myself, don't be a mechanic, because what you started, you'll never stop. That's kind of why when I took that job with my dad, I wasn't really a mechanic. I was just kind of the manager. I would pick who to call to come fix everything. I wasn't the actual one out there working on it, So mechanic background was great, so I didn't have to make, too many calls, or I wouldn't have to pay too many people to do the wrong thing. So I was kind of using my experience without actually, using my labor kind of aspect. But I never really wanted to buy a toolbox and be an actual wrench turner, because I knew that once I started it, it was just never going to stop. And then my best friend is also a mechanic. I've been best friends since, fourth grade, and he's been a mechanic since we were in high school. He got out of high school early and got his certifications and graduated early. And he's been doing the same thing for the last 15 years now. Just been a mechanic. And he's always, hey man, whenever you want to help out, or if you ever want to make extra money or whatever, this and that. And I'd help here and there. And I would do some stuff on my truck. And so he knew I had some experience and that kind of stuff. But I was like, yeah, okay. Whatever. If I have time, I'll stop by. And so I always did all that, and we get along real well. And that's whenever I was kind of struggling working at that trucking company, when I wasn't making a whole lot. He was like, well, come over here. We need a helper. We need another mechanic. I'll talk to my boss. I trust you. I know you don't have tools and you don't have none of that stuff, but he has a big service truck and it's loaded with all his tools. And he's like, I trust you. You can use my stuff, or if I'm not here, we can work together, or you can take it, and so on and so forth, and that kind of deal. So I did it, man. I took the step in the direction that I've kind of been avoiding for 10 years. And I've been a mechanic since then. And it's actually been another good decision career-wise, I guess, since getting out. Getting out was the best career choice, but since getting out is probably one of the better career choices, just because using my hands, I've been a little bit more healthier physically, mentally more healthier. But I don't have to have so much stress of when I was on the truck, it'd break. I didn't know what it was going to cost me. I didn't know if I was broken, I wasn't making no money. I was spending money because my truck was broken. I was just stressed that I was just over and that kind of deal, and didn't have to worry about working with family where I was gonna, not know if I was gonna be friends with them the next day and that kind of stuff and that kind of deal. But here, being a mechanic now, I get to mentally, pace myself. I get to put my mind on a job and get it done, and then feel the accomplishment of, okay, well, I figured it out. I repaired it. I fixed it. It's back out running, and it's going in the fleet. But I also use a lot of my, I don't know, I'm bringing it up because my best friend hates it, but my military career, as far as like, you do everything the exact same way, same standard. So it doesn't matter who comes before you or who comes after you, they can pick up exactly where you were. So now whenever, I get a piece of equipment in, I like to do it in a very specific way, which drives my friend nuts that I have to do it this way, but it
Right.
makes it so much easier and so much better. And it's funny because he has all the experience, right? He has all the experience, all the tools and
Uh-huh.
all that kind of stuff to do everything. But a lot of other guys that come whenever they drop equipment off, they drop the truck off, like, oh, we want Josh to do it. Not Sean, we want Josh
Right.
to look at my truck. I'm like, I don't know how to do all that, but they just know that I'm going to do it in a very specific way. Not that I'm a perfectionist by any means, but just because, I'm going to try to do it simple, versus Sean just wants to, my best friend just wants to get it done and move it out of the way. And I'm like, all right, well, I want to figure out what it is. Let's replace the right thing. Let's get it fixed the right way, get it back on the road. Cause I don't want to have to look at it again versus just bandaging it just to get it sent off and get to come back. So, um, I'm very thankful that the military instilled that in me, that I get to use that to this day. And I also enjoyed pissing my best friend off on a daily basis. That's kind of fun too. I'm very
You,
precise about everything.
you got to do that, right? And I think
Yeah.
some of that stuff that you learn in the military, that doing things in a methodical manner, doing things the same way each time, those are all very important life lessons. And it seems like you in the time that you were in, you took a lot away from your experience in the military. And it sounds like things are, it doesn't sound like you've ever not had a job. You've always worked, and sounds like they're kind of picking up for you. So I want to ask, before we end our conversation today, what would you like people to take away from our conversation?
Um, I, if I could pass anything on from that whole time that I've experienced, I would say, just take the leap of faith, and just try it, because it happens so quick and it ends so fast, or it just moves on so fast. I shouldn't say end, it just move on to too many new things so fast that you don't realize that, you you get to experience so much, or you get to learn so much, that you're going to hold on to forever, that you're not going to realize it. Just being in the military, or just in any job too, but also in the military, is stuff that you, at the time, you're not going to want to do, you're going to hate, not going to enjoy, but it ends so quick and you learn so much from it, and you get to hold that stuff. You get to hold all that in for so long that it makes a great foundation to be just a great functioning, person on a day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? It's the reason why so many people go back to being in the military, and they hold to it so close, even though everybody that's in it hates it so much. It's stuff that you learn that you don't realize you learn, and you just, it happens so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Josh, I appreciate you sharing all of that, all of your experience in the Coast Guard, and kind of what your takeaways were from that. Thanks for taking the time out today to talk about your time in the military. This is going to be something that folks in the future will listen to and gain a better understanding of, what our United States Coast Guard does. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this interview. I mean, this is great. I didn't know that your what you did even existed, and I think it's an awesome thing what you're doing. I hope it just lasts forever, and many more generations pick up. And I hope somebody listens to something I said, and it interests them and bettering themselves somewhere in their life because of it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.